Welcome to part 3 of the Advanced Call Routing Video Guide series. In this video, we explain the different settings available on the Grandstream UCM solutions to customize outbound caller ID numbers. The Grandstream UCM solutions offer different caller ID parameters that allow configuring specific outbound caller ID numbers based on the calling extension, outbound route, or SIP trunk. Mapping outbound caller ID numbers to specific departments involves configuring the UCM to assign specific DID numbers to an extension or group of extensions. There are several configuration pages in the UCM solutions that contain configuration parameters related to outbound caller ID. This provides a structured overview of the outbound caller ID parameters sorted by hierarchy. This list covers trunk, outbound route, and extension-specific caller ID settings that can be configured to control how caller ID information is displayed to the call recipient. Starting with the setting that has the highest priority, which is From User. This setting is available under Basic Settings page. It is used to explicitly define the From header in the SIP invite message, ensuring the outgoing caller ID is authorized and accepted by the provider. This is usually implemented in SIP trunks, where the account SIP username differs from the assigned DID. Some providers use a different format for SIP registration username while requiring the assigned caller ID in the From header when making outbound calls. The number entered in the From User box is the caller ID number that will be displayed to the call recipient. The From User option can be configured when there is only one caller ID number associated with a register SIP trunk. When From User option is not configured, the UCM by default uses the SIP trunk username as the source caller ID number for outbound calls. The Keep Trunk Caller ID setting is enabled by default, which forces the UCM to use the registration SIP username of the trunk as the source caller ID. Some VoIP providers require the outbound caller ID to match the trunk registration username to ensure all outbound calls display a single authorized number. If this setting is unchecked and no other caller ID parameter is configured, the UCM will use the calling extension number as the source caller ID. Using internal extensions as source caller ID for outbound calls may result in call failure because the caller ID is not a recognized or an authorized number by the provider. In a nutshell, From User and Keep Trunk Caller ID are SIP trunk-based features that define a single outbound caller ID number through a specific SIP trunk. When you need to customize the outbound caller ID to allow an extension or group of extensions to use their unique DID numbers, From User and Keep Trunk Caller ID must be disabled. The Grandstream UCM solutions offer different settings that can be enabled to customize outbound caller ID information, which is usually implemented to increase answer rates and direct callbacks to the intended department, especially when the inbound routes are configured with the same caller ID pattern. In this configuration example, 3 departments are set up with dedicated outbound caller ID numbers. One method to implement this requirement is to use the DoD option available from the VoIP Trunk configuration page. This feature simplifies outbound caller ID customization by mapping a caller ID number and name to a specific extension or a group of extensions. The option Add Extension is enabled when the extension number is mapped to the trailing digits of the outbound caller ID number. This illustrates how Add Extension works. The DoD number should be configured with a caller ID mask. This allows combining the DoD number with individual extensions, enabling the extension number to be appended before sending the call through the SIP trunk. The strip option is used to specify the number of leading digits that will be removed from the selected extensions before it is appended to the DoD number. A similar method to customize the outbound caller ID, as illustrated in this configuration example, is to use the DoD option available from the Outbound Routes configuration page. Outbound RouteDoD has a higher priority than VoIP DoD and offers more flexibility. It allows specific caller ID numbers to be displayed based on time condition and the dial destination defined in the matching outbound pattern. Because outbound routes can be configured with time conditions and outbound matching patterns, outbound call centers can customize the outbound caller ID automatically based on a predefined schedule to enhance and improve answer rates. Within this configuration page, select an outbound route for a specific destination and set specific outbound caller ID number and name and map them to an extension or group of extensions. While Outbound RouteDoD allows using multiple caller ID numbers per a single outbound route based on the calling extension, Outbound RouteCallerID assigns a single caller ID number to a specific outbound route. If no DoD or higher priority caller ID method is configured, the UCM uses the caller ID information configured at the outbound route level as the source caller ID for outgoing calls. Outbound RouteCallerID can be used in combination with the source caller ID allow list when extension-based call restriction is applied. The caller ID information is defined in this box. To enter the caller ID number and name, use this format. Caller ID information can also be configured at the extension level. In this case, the caller ID number will be for outgoing calls. The first name and last name are sent together as the source caller ID name. This is generally implemented to define a static, extension-based outbound caller ID. It is important to note that the extension caller ID number will also be used as a source caller ID number when making internal calls. The Outbound Caller ID feature with the lowest priority is Global Outbound Caller ID Number available under the PBX Settings configuration menu. The caller ID information entered here is used for all outgoing calls if no other higher priority caller ID setting is configured, and it is specifically enabled for peer SIP trunks. Global Outbound Caller ID Number does not apply to register SIP trunks. In addition to these outbound caller ID features, the UCM solutions offer additional settings that can be used to customize caller ID information for forwarded calls. The Keep Original CID feature is a setting for controlling the caller ID displayed on outgoing calls, especially those that originate as inbound calls and are subsequently forwarded to external numbers. When enabled, the Keep Original Caller ID setting ensures that the caller ID from the original inbound call is maintained and sent out as the source caller ID number for forwarded calls. This is commonly used in scenarios like forwarding calls from an extension to an external number, such as a cell phone. The Keep Original Caller ID setting operates within a specific hierarchy to determine which caller ID is used for external outgoing calls on the UCM. Its priority is very high, only superseded by the From User field for register SIP trunks. To customize the outbound caller ID information for forwarded calls at the extension level instead of the trunk level, the UCM supports the DoD feature under the extension's settings. This feature can be enabled when DoD is already configured for the extension at the VoIP trunk or outbound routes levels. For example, this feature can be implemented to allow the call recipient to distinguish between direct and forwarded calls from the UCM. It is important to note that the Callee DoD feature at the extension level overrides the Keep Original Caller ID feature at the trunk level. In other words, Callee DoD has a higher priority. Besides the outbound caller ID features that we covered, the UCM solutions support some additional SIP headers that can be implemented to communicate custom caller ID numbers. These headers include P-asserted identity and preferred identity, and they are available under the Advanced Settings configuration page of the VoIP trunk. It is always important to check with the SIP provider if they support such headers to carry caller ID information. This wraps up today's video guide about outbound caller ID management on the Grandstream UCM solutions. Thank you for watching.